What's up, people of YouTube? My name is General Prime and welcome back to my channel. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification icon for more videos. We seem to have found ourselves in a world where speaking your mind and having an opinion that seems different from what everyone else considers to be the truth and norm now gets you in a lot of trouble, and that could be very detrimental for us as a whole. We could very well be headed for that 1984 type dystopian future without even knowing it. There was a time when saying what wasn't generally agreed upon or having an opinion that was different from a commonly held belief, regardless of how true it is, could literally get you killed. But as time went on and we adopted the concept of democracy, which came with perks like free speech and the right to an opinion, the common man could say whatever he wants without fear of punishment or damnation. There are even still places today where the freedom to truly express oneself doesn't exist, yet alone to have the freedom of difference in opinions. But yet, there seems to be a certain country that already achieved that enviable level of democracy and freedom, but now seemingly digressing and devolving into a state of identity politics, bullying, and a herd mentality type reality, where those who don't hold or share the same school of thought as the majority does are shamed, judged, discriminated, and in most cases lose sources of their livelihoods like their jobs. I always talk about how the United States has so much freedom necessary for it to be reckless enough to destroy itself, and with each passing day it becomes more and more apparent, and there is nowhere else where it's obvious and clearer than in the new phenomenon called cancel culture, where sins and misdeeds of the past of mostly public figures like celebrities are fervently searched for and dug back up with the intention of proving a point that these people are not as righteous as they seem. One example that comes to mind is the admittedly homophobic 2011 tweet from Kevin Hart about his son being gay that was somehow brought back up when he was hired to host the 2019 Academy Awards, a tweet that cost him that job, because even though he grew up and out of his ignorance about the matter, the internet never forgot and came back to bite him in the ass. Another example, as we all know, is the dispute between the Mandalorian star Gina Carano and her dark corporate overlord Disney. And for a multi-billion-dollar corporation, I still can't wrap my head around the fact that they'll be so short-sighted to fire such a brilliant actress simply because of a tweet. I like to imagine that I am neither liberal nor conservative. I just happen to have common sense. And so it surprises me when I find out that it's the people who claim to be liberal, progressive, and in support of free speech and the freedom of expression that called for her cancellation and ultimately her firing from Disney. In the world of social media, everyone is omniscient, altruistically righteous, and never makes a mistake, and their opinions always matter and they are never wrong. And so when someone does or says something that though may not be necessarily wrong or immoral, the pitchforks are deployed and their heads are requested to roll. But one thing that these social media keyboard warriors, as they are often called, seem to forget is that nobody is perfect. We all make mistakes, and there are times in our life when we have done and said things that are outrageously dumb and despicable. And so our entire lives cannot be summed up by those episodes. People shouldn't be judged entirely on past actions unless, like Donald Trump, they are incapable of learning, changing and growing. And so I'm surprised that in this day and age, a lot of people still haven't figured out that this is supposed to be a no-brainer. And so it's got me wondering, what kind of things can I say or what sort of opinions do I have that could potentially get me cancelled if I was a public figure or a famous celebrity? So here are some of my unpopular opinions that I hope years from now don't come back to bite me in the ass. The first one is that I want to achieve world peace by holding the rest of the world hostage with a weapon so outrageously despicable they would have no option but to obey and stay in line. I don't care about democracy. Humans don't deserve such concepts. I want to be a dictator to control everything. I can settle for a social-democratic system of things, but with all the power, while I keep pushing towards progress, innovation, and the better understanding of ourselves and our world through science. There is absolutely nothing wrong with taking advantage of people. If an axe is used to split wood and cars to travel distances, why should there be a problem with me making simple-minded Cindy or butter-brained Bob do my bidding? I mean, if religion has been at it for thousands of years, controlling entire generations and races, what's wrong if I decide to do the same with people who are too bland, plain and sometimes too innocent to understand what's going on? The truth is that just as wars are necessary for the advancement of civilizations, we will always need people to be tillers of the earth and others to be eaters of the fruits. There is no such thing as unconditional love, and that's something a lot of people fail to come to terms with. It's almost as if people don't take into fact what the word unconditional means. Even the God of the Bible, who claims to love unconditionally, still sends people to hell if they don't love him back or believe in him. Truth is, humans are too selfish and self-centered to love without some sort of condition attached to it. Most times, people mistake infatuation for love, and when that dies off, their true intentions are revealed. There's a saying that no matter how hot she is, there's always someone who's tired of her bullshit. And it's so true because for Jay-Z to cheat on someone like Beyonce, it says a lot. I'm not saying there aren't people out there who are conscious enough to be loyal to their partners, but if you noticed, I used the word loyal instead of love because loyalty is better than love. Anyone can love or claim to love, but you can't fake loyalty. Speaking of love, first of all, I think humanity has come quite far in regards to medical science. There's a lot we have achieved, a lot of diseases we have fought and gotten rid of, and problems that were previously thought to be impossible to cure, now taken care of by a few pills or injections. But yet, there's still a lot we have to do. There are incurable diseases like cancer, Down syndrome, autism, and the likes that gets passed on through genes and then end up making life miserably unlivable for the innocent babies they affect. But one way I think is logical and humane enough to get rid of these diseases is by euthanizing the offsprings that bear them. Humanely, of course. I mean, if we can do the same with plants and animals through selective breeding to ensure that we get the healthiest of both worlds, I see no reason why we can't do the same with our offsprings. I don't know about you, but back to that issue of love. If it so happens that I have a kid who happens to be either handicapped or disabled in some form or the other, or is plagued with health issues ranging from autism to cerebral palsy, or in extreme cases, conjoined or whatever, I don't think I would let them live. I don't think I could live with myself seeing them suffer every day. And so in my infinite love for them, I would have no option but to put them to rest as soon as they are born. That way, they won't grow in discomfort, ridicule, and living every day in dread. Another unpopular opinion of mine is how people like to say the world is a lot safer, healthier, and peaceful than it's ever been. Now that might be true, but it doesn't mean the world still isn't messed up and maniacal. Sure, we are relatively scientific. There are not a lot of wars. Food produce is plentiful and a lot healthier. Medical science is thriving. Information is effortlessly accessible, and the average lifespan has drastically increased. But it doesn't mean that humans aren't still suffering, and places like in third world countries are not still under subject to pain, lack, and plagued with both natural and artificial disasters. One thing that video games have taught me is that the more you progress and more obstacles you face, the bigger the weapons you need to face them. And what that means is that though it's true that life is relatively okay today when looked at from a general standpoint compared to the past, there are new problems we are faced with today that are difficult to deal with. Individual problems that cannot be brushed away with the excuse that everything is okay, because it's not. Years ago, people didn't have problems like overpopulation, climate change, and the myriad of issues that come with it. And so I don't think that saying the world is a lot better than it used to be is a good enough excuse to belittle or even flat out disregard the problems we face today. Fat positivity shouldn't be a thing. I get that over the years, what we used to consider attractive was different from how it is now. For example, in the 1500s up to the 1900s, being fat used to be considered beautiful, attractive, and even opulent, seemingly because there wasn't enough to go around back then, and people who were fat were seen as rich and amassed with plenty. But today, our idea of being attractive has changed because we know better. Health-wise, I mean, there was a boom in fitness and being lean in the 80s, but today it seems like people have become too lazy to do as little as taking care of themselves. And so now we have a battalion of morbidly obese sacks of meat using their newly found biased freedom of expression as an excuse for being indolent and podgy. I like to point out that there are different body types and they all react differently to the intake of food. But when it gets to a point where the quality and nutritional value of a meal is disregarded and substituted instead for cheap fast food products, at the same time reinforced with the belief that one should love their bodies and themselves despite being negligent of the consequences of obesity, then yeah, that's when I disagree with the toxic fat positivity movement, because it preys on the weaknesses of people who are too insecure or lack the willpower to change how they look. Sure, they might be all smiles and accepting of themselves online and from people who reassure them that they are beautiful despite how they look. I can 100% bet that they suffer when they're alone, that they look at themselves with dread and are appalled by the images in the mirror that stares back at them, and so they continue to eat themselves to death, depressed, unhealthy, and unable to speak up, because in reality, there is a stark contrast between what they have been told to accept about themselves and what they see on platforms like Instagram with photoshopped models setting unrealistic beauty standards. The stars and the cosmos in general have nothing to do with human behavior, and people who use horoscopes and their vaguely shallow understanding of astrology and zodiac signs in general as a justification or basis for their actions and conduct are at best misinformed and misguided, and at worst willfully ignorant, childish, and delusional. Like, no, Karen, I'm not going to accept your bullshit behavior because you are a Capricorn or whatever. Fucking take responsibility of your actions and stop acting like a snowflake. I'm just going to go ahead and say I don't like motivational speakers. We seem to have an influx of those recently. Everyone seems to be a motivational speaker these days. Apparently, that's where the money is. Everyone seems to have that story they tell, books they sell, or secrets they hold that are guaranteed to give you that success you incomparably desire and is capable of changing your world forever. But the truth is that for every one motivational story with a happy ending, there are 1,000 others with the same story that failed. And that's because there are a lot of contributing factors to success. I'm sure you've heard of the saying that hard work leads to success, and all you have to do to win is to believe in yourself. But the reality is, sometimes, more often than not, no matter how hard you work or how much dedication you commit to something, there is still a chance it fails and falls apart. You never hear people who fail spewing out generic motivational quotes, and that's exactly why some motivational speakers piss me off, because they think that because it worked for them, it must work for other people. Furthermore, just because a person of color or a woman gets voted or occupies a position in government or politics doesn't necessarily mean that they have the best intentions at heart for the people or that they are going to do a good job. One look at the level of leadership in African countries like Nigeria, and you see that not all black people are competent. Oftentimes, I see a lot of people sending congratulatory messages to people of color who have been bestowed with positions previously thought to be solely for white men or white people in general, and I ask myself if they truly deserve to be in those positions, or if they are there to fulfill the righteousness of being woke, progressive, and in tune with the times. What I'm trying to say is, the right person for the job should be the person who is 100% capable of doing the job, regardless of if they are black, brown, gay, female, or identified to a gender with a name too ridiculously complex to pronounce. There are organizations like PETA that militantly fight against animal cruelty on the name of their love for animals. And I get the inhumane conditions factory farms put animals in, but I don't think that people are completely honest when they say they love animals. I think that when such claims are made, people need to specify what animals they claim to love. Are bugs included? How about disease-carrying insects like mosquitoes or venomous snakes, or parasites that live in the body and feast on your insides till you die? When you claim to love animals, does that include the ones that can tear you apart without giving it any thoughts, or are you only talking about your cats and inbred chihuahuas? Speaking of inbred chihuahuas, in our world today, I don't think that purebred dogs exist. Those majestic animals that used to look cool and beautiful as nature intended have been bred and inbred to the point it would be considered to call them hideous monsters. Dogs don't look like they used to anymore. For example, the English Terrier compared to what it is today used to look entirely different in the past, and the pug too has been inbred to oblivion, so much so that pugs find it difficult to breathe or even walk. Their skulls are terribly deformed, and yet people still don't seem to care about the level of suffering these animals go through. For some strange reason, it appears to be that people think pugs are cute, but if you ask me, if these animals could talk, they would be begging to put every single one of them out of their misery. Also, vegans shouldn't name or make their vegan foods to look like conventional meals. If you really don't like burgers or hot dogs, you shouldn't make meals that look like burgers or hot dogs that are neither burgers nor hot dogs. It's misleading, insincere, and insinuates that you really miss eating meat. I wouldn't want to chew on a chicken nugget only to find out that it's deep fried cabbage. That's just sad. So dear vegans, stick to your own original meals and give them original names. Finally, like Tywin Lannister said,
"Any man who must say, 'I am the king,' is no true king."
And it has to be known that people who constantly claim to be good people, who religiously make sure the world knows about their good deeds, who claim to be empaths, are quite literally none of those things. The truth is, none of us are good or bad. We are just products and reflections of our environments. There are studies that suggest that violent societies are as a result of poverty, bad leadership, and the lack of opportunity for people to reach their preconceived potentials. What that means is that when there isn't enough, people tend to lose their minds, their civility, and their humanity, because ultimately, And this can be argued from a biological standpoint. We are selfish and tend to think of ourselves first before others. People in so-called civilized societies and first world countries tend to place themselves on high horses by thinking they are righteous and good. But just as the COVID-19 pandemic has shown us, they act like uncontrollable animals when their convenience is slightly tested. And nobody puts it better than the Joker when he said,
See, their morals, their code, it's a bad joke. Dropped at the first sign of trouble. They're only as good as the world allows them to be. I'll show you. When the chips are down, these civilized people, they'll eat each other.
And that's why I think that nobody is good or bad. Sure, there are people who show selfless acts of kindness sometimes, and that's fine and good. But ultimately, I think people are inherently selfish and mostly act based on their self-interest. But that's it, guys. Those are some of the opinions I have that may or may not get me cancelled if I was a public figure. I certainly think that we need to address the issue of cancel culture because though a lot of people say outrageous things, that only confirms the beauty of democracy in relation to how far we've come. And cancel culture is a barrier to that and a virus that must be destroyed if we want to keep progressing. So leave your comments below. Let me know what your opinions are. Hit the like button because it helps me out a bunch. Subscribe if you're new, and I'll talk to you guys later. Cheers.